Needing a hearing aid is one thing, but letting people know you have one is another. Fortunately, these days, they're practically invisible. Dr. Gnewikow talks about the history of hearing aids and lets us take a closer look.
Looking at the change of hearing aids over the years, when they first came out back, I guess, in the late 40s, you remember your great-great-grandmother had a box and a wire and a plug. And then probably in the 50s, they went to over-the-ear hearing aids that were pretty large with little plugs in the ear. And then probably in the 60s, they graduated to in-the-ear hearing aids. Most of them were kind of big, but they didn't go over the ear. And then they got smaller and smaller. And then actually in the last 10 to 15 years, they've gone back to over-the-ear again. The majority of hearing aids that are being used now, probably around the world for new patients that have moderate loss, are over-the-ear hearing aids. And there are some reasons for that. Here's an example of some real tiny little hearing aids. And you see they have like a little tube on the end of them. One advantage to using these now is cosmetic. Because when you put this over your ear and you have nothing but a little tube, you don't really see it. So if you look at my ear, for example, I wear a little over-the-ear hearing aid, but looking at me from the front, it's hardly visible at all because the piece is so small. And so cosmetics is an issue.
Sure.
But more of an issue is you don't have to completely stop the ear up. So many people, when they get a hearing aid, one of their complaints is, I just can't get used to it because I feel so plugged up. And when I talk, I feel like I'm down in a well. Most high-frequency hearing losses do not require low-frequency amplification, so you can leave your ear open. Now, if you leave your ear open, then all of your natural hearing in the low frequencies, it just goes right on into your ear. It doesn't have to go through the hearing aid. And what goes through the tiny little tube would be just the high frequencies. So now we have a way of using as much of your natural God-given hearing as you can without putting it through a hearing aid if you have good low-frequency hearing, which is the case in the majority of people that we see. And you also have the advantage of cosmetics. Another advantage is, as your hearing changes, you may require a more powerful hearing aid. Now, hearing aids are kind of expensive, so you don't want to have to buy a new one every year. The over-the-ear have much more range in them, so that if you ended up starting with a mild to moderate hearing loss and it got much worse, you can generally use the same hearing aid by simply changing the type of fitting you use. One of the other issues is battery life. A lot of the extremely tiny hearing aids use the batteries very rapidly. The over-the-ear seem to give you much better battery life, at least in many situations. So the bottom line is you can use any kind of hearing aid that you choose. You can use over-the-ear, you can use in-the-ear, or the very tiny ones that go deep into the ear canal. I have all of them. I've had a hearing loss for 10 or 15 years. The one that I prefer is the over-the-ear, not simply for cosmetics, but for comfort and for clarity. I do have the very tiny in the ear, and they work okay, but they tend to give you a sensation of being more closed up. So that's probably the reason that you're seeing everywhere, from the VA on down, using the over-the-ear with the small tubes. And people walk around you all day long and have hearing aids on, and you don't even notice it anymore.
That's a very good point. And cosmetically, these as well match your hair color.
They match your hair color. That's a good point. We do have the access to make them different colors. And a lot of times when I'm talking to a patient and they say, well, I don't want to wear an over-the-ear hearing aid, and I say, you mean like the one I'm wearing? And they kind of look at me and say, what do you mean you're not wearing a hearing aid, until I show them, because it's very cosmetically appealing and virtually invisible for most people.
And Audiology Hearing Aid Associates has 2 area locations, one on Langhorne Road in Lynchburg, 434-528-4245. Also in Danville, 434-799-6288, and online at digitalhearing4u.com.